All right. Welcome to CEO Zones, the online community exclusively for CEOs. Today we have our guest, Jeff Chatterton. He's the CEO of Checkmate Public Affairs. He is the author of Leaders Under Fire, which is the great survival guide for CEOs navigating corporate crisis. Welcome, Jeff. I trust you're doing well. And where are you today?
I am in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. It's about an hour to the left of Pearson Airport in Toronto.
Hour to the left. That
Yeah,
would be west.
yeah.
Okay. All right. And I know that airport well because I usually go in there in a pedal jumper and I'm way out in the middle of nowhere in the wind and the snow trying to come back into the main terminal. But
Yes. Welcome to Canada.
yeah, welcome to Canada. All right. First, I'd like to pause because it is September 11th. We are doing this live stream and pause in remembrance of September 11th, 2021. Pardon me, I had to think about that for a second. But clearly, I think everyone who was alive then would remember the nearly 3,000 lives that were lost, the horrific terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City, also at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., or Virginia, properly. And then here in Pennsylvania, where I live, Flight 93, which crashed into a field near Shanksville, which Shanksville, due to the memorial, is on the map, but I don't think it was on the map prior to that terrorist attack on that day. It's real close to Johnstown for anybody trying to look at that from another country or another place. That might help you. And it is, as Jeff would say, to the right of Pittsburgh, several hours. I do sincerely want to humbly remember the victims, the fathers, the mothers, the daughters, the sons, friends, colleagues, private equity workers that I knew at the time that were in the building, who went about their ordinary life just like it was this morning. They woke up, went to work, did their normal things in New York, Washington, and for sure Western Pennsylvania. Uh, it was harvest time, so I don't know that there was any activity in that field at that day, but clearly a very calm, still day that morning in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And all those 3,000 lives were cut short. Fortunately, I think we can still remember them. I promise that I won't ever forget that day. And we actually take a special time here at our house in Pennsylvania for this day every year. This evening, we will be honoring those that were victims of that and the first responders and all of the wonderful police officers, firemen, paramedics, all of those who ran into danger. And I think that was the first time after leaving the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Army that I had to think about what would I do should something like that happen. And clearly, I would hope I personally have the courage to run to help. I tell myself I would, but when you're in that moment, you have choices to make. So, those who ran toward the incredible danger, thank you for your courage. Thank you for sacrificing of yourself to go help others. So, Jeff, uh, being a expert in high crisis communications, are there any lessons we can look back over the last 24 years and learn from 9/11 from a crisis communications point of view?
There are, and I think 9/11 is one of those stereo. No, it's not stereotypical in any way. It's one of those prototypical um, drop out of the blue, black swan. No one could see that one coming. Type events, and I'm going to talk about this in the presentation about what do you do when you're dealing with incomplete information. Um, I will say, in 25 years of crisis work, I think I've had to drop everything and deal with just out of the blue black swan what's happening less than 10 times. Most of the situations that a CEO are going to find themselves are things that they should have or ought to have seen coming. And we'll talk about the difference and what that looks like.
Okay. Um, I guess a moment I would think about is when our president went there to the very site, and as the CEO or CEO audience, board of director, advisor audience, at that moment, I think that was, at least in my mind, one of his stronger, visible leadership moments, but yet still very transparent. His personal beliefs, I can still kind of see him standing there that day with the giant American flag behind him on a crane. That's the image in my mind. And so, as a leader, he rightfully or wrong, I forget his message, but I think as a CEO, we need to learn to be in front of it once something horrific happens. Which reminds me of kind of part of your book where some CEOs choose not to be involved in their own crisis communications, and some do. Maybe just as another thought and an add-on, what are the advantages when the CEO kind of takes the worst case on by the horns and gets ahead of it? What happens then?
So it definitely shows authenticity, and it shows unquestionable leadership. Now, whether or not that's the right call to make or not, that's a whole other conversation I can have.
Right.
Um, there are times when there are times, and very legitimate times, when you don't, as the CEO, want to be that person, because quite frankly, in a developing situation, sometimes the information changes. And if you've gone out and staked your reputation on something that it has now changed, now you've lost your credibility. The the hard reality is that if you bring someone else out first, it gives you the ability to accelerate, to go up the ladder, but you can't go back down.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Uh, so again, as we're asking the audience there to maybe prepare some questions, things like that. Uh, One of the, and I always pick on you when we did meet the speaker last month or whenever that was. I picked on you and you said, "Hey, yeah, I wrote it, but I don't memorize it and have it at my fingertips in my brain."
It's just a quiz.
I'm gonna guide you just a little bit. But chapter 5: check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yep.
Kind of what you just reminded me of. But could you unpack maybe that chapter of the book for us so that the audience, being I can see on my screen that there's some professional directors, public board members, there's some CEOs, and there's a couple crisis managers, I believe, from some larger corporations. So can you kind of unpack that so we don't wreck ourselves, right? Because that
So
would be rule
the
number one.
I'm gonna seek you, and I'm gonna seek your audience's permission to speak bluntly. Um, and here's some cold hard realities. Often, the reason your company got into trouble is because of your ego. You took a look at uh, every time Uber makes the news, right? It's because, for the first 10 years, it was because Travis Kalanick would be saying something dumb.
Right.
Um, look at Tesla. Look at all, the astronomer, at the Coldplay concert. You go on and on and on. It's people who are making decisions without the benefit of hindsight, for obvious reasons, but also without the benefit of perspective. And they think that they are naturally right because they're the CEO. And unfortunately, the world doesn't necessarily believe that you're right just because you have three initials after your name. And uh, it is shocking how often I have to go into a boardroom and say, respectfully, have you considered that you might be wrong? Right?
Mm. And I guess I've done that for different reasons with CEO past clients, and sometimes I'm told, no, you're wrong.
Yeah, it
Anyway,
does happen. Yep.
that's the CEO, I guess, is about to wreck themselves. But anyway,
Yeah, and I mean, we all have stories. We all know those stories. Yeah, just don't be that guy.
okay. Do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share before the audience warms you up with some out of the blue questions?
Well, so I have a presentation. Do you want me to go through it, or do you
That
want me
would
to
be great. That might cause people to, one, get value from you, and two, they might have questions then.
let me go through some stuff quickly.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Um, so if this works properly, you should be seeing a picture of an airplane.
Going down.
There we
Unfortunately.
go. So yeah, I start every presentation with this image. This is the Canadian CF-18 fighter jet in the last quarter second of its life. This was practice day at the air show in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. What's really important about this are three different things. First off, the pilot survives. That's important. Otherwise, that makes me a real jerk. Secondly, we kept the pilot's call sign out of the news. In real life, pilots don't get really cool call signs like Maverick or Goose or Ice. They get call signs based on stupid things they've done in their life. They get assigned for them, and his was Boozer, which we managed to keep out of the news. Boozer is alive today. Boozer is still flying because he pulled the ejection handle on that particular airplane before master alarm went off in his helmet. And if you think about that, that's just, I think, the ballsiest thing I've ever heard, because he pulled the plug on a $50 million airplane before the airplane told him it was in trouble. If he had waited until master alarm had gone off, you can see he's about 20 feet above the ground. He would have ejected right into the runway.
Explode.
He would have, the very next frame in this sequence of photos is a massive fireball. He is alive today because of his skills and his training, not because of what the manual says. I think that's absolutely the poster child of why I am not a big fan of the typical old school, stale crisis communication plans. So with that in mind, um, for the rest of his career, Boozer is going to be known as that guy. He is the guy who managed that incident. That is your opportunity. That's your moment. What is your moment going to be when you've got the mayor on line 1 and CNN on line 2, and everyone is staring at you and looking, desperately for leadership? So when I started making presentations to industry groups, the very first thing that I learned was never start with a graph. So the first thing I want to do is start with a graph. The graph looks boring, but it's the reason I get excited, and it's the reason I wake up every day. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is, if I got this data studying you, the other CEOs in the room, I'd be thrilled, because there's clearly a trend here, and that means I can get published and I can, make all sorts of headlines and research. That's all that really matters. There's one weird green dot above the curve, which means there's one weirdo in the room, and you know who you are. But that's no problem. Because, as most of you know, I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because it's clearly a measurement error. And the reason we know it's a measurement error is because it's messing up my data. One of the first things we teach people in economics and statistics, psychology, even traditional marketing communications, how do we eliminate you weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers so we can find the line of best fit? Now, that's fantastic if we're trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking, too. But if I'm interested in your potential, if I'm interested in your customer loyalty, your marketing, your resiliency in the face of overwhelming crisis and trust, that doesn't help me. What we're doing is creating the cult of the average. If I ask a question like, how do we calm your customers about a product recall? We change the answer to, how do we calm the average person about a product recall? We tailor our entire business towards the average. Now, if you fall below average, that's great because guys like me get excited. You come to me with a problem, I walk into your boardroom, you leave knowing that you have 10 problems. If you we'll talk to your customers, I'm going to talk to your suppliers, heck, I'm going to talk to your mom. But eventually, the goal here is I'm going to make you normal again. But here's my point. Normal is merely average. So what I'm proposing is that if we strive to be average and become attractive to the average, we remain average. So instead of deleting those dots, I want to study those dots. Why are some of you really high above the curve? Above the curve in terms of your marketing potential, your sales potential, your employee absenteeism, or yes, even building trust in the face of crisis. Whatever it is that's going on there, instead of deleting you, we should study you, because maybe we can not just move people to the average, but move the entire average up. So that's my whole reason that I do what I do. So what does that even look like?
Pardon me, sir. Can you
Yeah.
go back one? Because you reminded me of something else in your book. See, I read my content partners' books. Okay. Early on in the book, you have a quote that makes common sense to everybody everywhere. And I thought that was a picture of the following: it takes many good deeds to earn a good reputation, but only one to lose your reputation. I thought that's where you were going. So thank you. Now that I've interrupted you, welcome to my show, right? Okay, let's go next.
I tell the story in the book about I believe it's Nigel, the specialty aviation company. Nigel ran a hot air balloon company in Africa. I get called, and again, it was one of those 10 moments where I drop everything, and it was basically, can you come to Africa? When? Right now. The balloon had gone down. 3 people were dead. They lost all of their business. We got to work. We did some non-conventional stuff, stuff that you're never going to find in crisis communications plan. We ignored the media for a bunch of reasons. We hit up the primary suppliers with empathy, with understanding, with an awareness of what's going on. I tell the story in the book. A year and a half later, I ran into Nigel at the world's largest tourism trade show in Berlin, Germany, and bumped into him. And I was like, "Hey, how's business?" And he goes, "Oh, we're not where we are." And I'm like, "Understandable. I mean, they had gone from $5 million a year to bankrupt. Small little tourism company." He goes, "No, you misunderstood me. We've grown by a third." And it's proof that it's not that the bad thing happens to you. It's how you respond to the bad thing that determines trust, that determines credibility, and ultimately determines profitability. So that's what I've been running around. I get the questions a lot. I get challenged a lot. Oh, we have a really great marketing and communications team. And that's fantastic. I work great with those people, but that's not what I do. Communications and marketing is it's critically important. If you have the newest flavor of peanut butter, you need someone to be able to promote that newest flavor of peanut butter. If you have a new piece of software, let's talk about benefits. Let's talk about all of those wonderful things. That is a green light, wonderful environment. I think you have to be very careful, frankly. Sometimes these people think that they're good at crisis. And the analogy I like to think about it is sometimes they also go to the gym and they box with a personal trainer. I don't box with a personal trainer. I box I bare knuckle box, and I do it every day. And the really psychotic thing is I like it, but that is what we're doing. We're aggressively defending using the tools of psychology and group and mass communication. I wouldn't dare try to tell the communications and marketing team how to promote the newest flavor of peanut butter. I don't think you want, as the CEO, to be asking your communications and marketing team how to protect your reputation in the middle of a crisis. So, the two steps I always like to begin with, obviously, if you have a problem because there is bleeding, stop the bleeding. If your building is on fire, put out the fire. If you have oil coming out of a broken pipeline in the middle of the Louisiana Gulf, stop the oil that's coming out of the pipeline in the middle of the Louisiana Gulf. You can only put lipstick on a pig for so long before eventually the public smartens up and goes, that's just a really pretty looking pig. Yeah, you haven't actually fixed the problem. So none of what we are talking about today is designed to obfuscate the truth. The truth is critically important. Do the right thing. That being said, sometimes bad things happen to good companies. And when that happens, I refer to the Chinese characters for crisis. There are two pictograms here. The first means danger. The second means opportunity. The Chinese word for crisis is literally dangerous opportunity. Now, the danger is self-evident. You have a building on fire. You've got a pipeline that's leaking out, oil into the Louisiana Gulf. Maybe that new flavor of peanut butter that you've just announced has a massive product recall because people are getting salmonella. It doesn't matter what the danger is. The opportunity lies in the fact that people are talking about it. They're talking about you. This is your opportunity to prove you can be trusted, that you can be credible. And ultimately, if you can handle these moments with grace and with dignity and empathy and the ability to calm an upset audience, you are going to become far more profitable in the process. So the dangerous opportunity. So when you've done with the thing, maybe it's something massively chaotic like 9/11. Maybe it's you've just discovered that there are broken shards of glass in your peanut butter. It does not matter what the issue is. There is no excuse. Speed is your friend. You need to get this information out there as quickly as possible. Now, I know a lot of people with legal background are going, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, you need to make sure you've got all the facts right. You need to make sure that you need to be very careful here. You can't admit liability. And I'm telling you, it's a whole lot simpler and a whole lot more nuanced at the same time, because there are some essentials that you can absolutely share right away. The what, the who, the when, and the where. Two fans. Los Angeles police were called when two fans attacked each other at tonight's LA Kings game. Police were notified and they were removed from the scene. We're going to have further information about guest safety, tonight at 10 p.m. when we're talking about the update. Whatever the issue is, that's the what, the who, the when, and the where. That is fine. Get that information out of the way. We're exploring a potential product recall due to foreign contaminants in our peanut butter. We have stopped shipping on these particular product lines. There's a whole playbook I could run you through on any sort of product recall, but you've got those basics. Where people like me, quite frankly, are critically necessary, and where we make our money is not the who, the what, the when, and the where. It's the how and the why. How were two fans able to smuggle weapons into a secure LA Kings game? Why didn't your security intervene sooner? How come peanut butter kept being shipped, even though production managers flagged that there was a potential problem. All of those types of problems, I call them the Monday morning questions. And that's where genuine leadership is so critically necessary. Bill, you talked about this with President Bush. President Bush didn't show up at the World Trade Center on 9/11. He was there maybe September 14th. I'm not going to get the exact dates correct, but there was some time. But in the meantime, they got to work and they were able to communicate. Because here's the thing, it's not about facts. It's not about what actually happened. It's not about your peanut butter. It's not about the Louisiana Gulf. It's about whether or not people can trust you. People talk about the difference between risk and crisis, and I've done a lot of work with major arenas, and I tell people, if a meteorite comes out of the sky and destroys the entire West Grandstand, and everyone stands around and cheers, you don't have a crisis. You have a massive unplanned renovation, but you don't have a crisis. Crisis is when people are upset with you for something that's your responsibility. And that is really what crisis communications is about. It's not about the data. It's not about the facts. It's not about what actually happened. It's about what's happening on an emotional level. So we talked about the lessons you can learn from 9/11. If you remember, if you go back to those days, we had I remember those days clearly. And up in Canada, we were unsure what was happening. Obviously, the entire world was watching. We were struggling to through dial-up internet to try to stream CNN in the office, until eventually the office just gave up at any sort of pretense at productivity and sent everyone home where we could watch live TV. No one knew. No one knew if the highways were open, if the buses were running. Like the world had shut off instantly. No one knew what was happening in the lower half of Manhattan. And Rudolph Giuliani, I'll give him credit. Before Rudolph Giuliani is a fascinating case study, because he managed to get himself into all sorts of trouble later in his career. But if you remember, Rudolph Giuliani in the months after 9/11 had 95% approval rating, because he followed this playbook. Here's what we know. Here is what we don't know. And here's where you can go for more information. We know that World Trade Centers 5 and 7 are down. We don't know the status of Building 6, Building 4, and Building 3. We are working, we know that this one is still standing, but we think it may be condemned. We do not know who did this. We don't know, exactly who's been inside. Here is a list of known survivors. If you would like to add your name to that list, please go to this website. Here is a list of known decedents whose next of kin have been notified. You can go to that list at this particular point. Basically, that's all he did for 3 days. This is what we know. Here's where we don't know. And here's where you can go for more information. Oftentimes, go for more information is, I will be back at 10 p.m. to deliver another update. By the way, if you say that you're going to be back at 10 p.m., what time are you back? 9:58. You don't screw with the little tiny things that you can do to build trust. If you tell a media broadcast crew, we will be back at 10 to give another update, and you're not back until 10:03, someone in a newsroom is now angry at you because they have 3 minutes of dead air that they now have to fill. Follow through on the little things, right? Honor your word. That's all well and good, but all that does is buy you time. And again, now we get to the Monday morning questions. How? Why? Those are the questions that make or break careers. So we have studied this. I have studied this ad nauseum. I have good friends from Dr. Vince Cavello from Columbia University has done some groundbreaking research on how do you build trust in the face of high risk communications. So there's 4 big factors. Now I don't have a pointer. I don't know if oh maybe does that show up on the screen? There we go. My little cursor.
Yes.
Yes. This one, from 1 till 2 o'clock, piece of the pie. We're going to call that honesty. Okay, are you telling the truth? Right. By the way, that's where most men screw up. That's politically incorrect as heck, and I get that. But in my experience, if a man is going to screw up, it's because, look, I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. If you don't trust me, you can go pound sand. And I'm here to tell you, truth is important. Without truth, you're dead in the water. But it is not the be all and end all of whether or not someone is going to trust you in the face of crisis. This middle piece, we're going to call that expertise, competency. I am telling the truth about the peanut butter, and I have a PhD in food recall science. I'm the world's leading expert in peanut butter recalls. Okay, so everyone knows and admits that I'm telling the truth. Everyone knows that I know what I'm doing. And that's still only about 1/3 of your audience. Okay. We're going to call this one dedication. I brought a sleeping bag to the office. No one goes home until we figure out why the peanut butter is being recalled, until we discover how guns were able to get into the building, whatever the particular issue is. Okay. So you've got those 3 and you still only have half of your audience. What's left? It's funny, and I ask this in live audiences all the time. Who wants to take a guess? I will say, the the gender breakdown is pretty funny. In 2 decades of asking this question, I have had a man answer this one properly maybe 4 times. The number one thing people are looking for when they want to trust you, when they want to they don't need to like you, they don't need to agree with what you're saying, they just need to trust you. You get it right, and it's a corporate superpower. You get it wrong, you've lost half your audience. You're dead in the water. It's empathy. Do people believe that you know how they feel? If they don't believe that you know how they feel, you're never going to get off first base. It's never going to fly. They need to believe, and if people don't believe that you know how they feel, trust me, they will communicate. That is where you get picketers outside of your building. That's where you get angry letters to the editor. That's where you get shareholder revolts from activist investors because no one has acknowledged how they feel. If you can acknowledge how they feel and work past that point, it is a massive superpower. Frankly, it's also a really good way to avoid getting into trouble over the fact that you didn't do the dishes even though you promised, and everything else. It's not about the dishes, it's that you were being an obstinate jerk and not listening. So let's talk about how you feel and move on, right? Obviously, stop the bleeding, do the dishes, explain, look, I bet this isn't about the dishes. I bet this is about you asked me to do a simple job and I didn't do it. And that must be really frustrating for you, is going to go so much more than I was busy because I was playing my video game. or whatever else is going on.
We're going to mark the replay for you, Jeff, at minute 34 on the replay out there on YouTube and our website and inside our community. You're also a marriage counselor, but
yeah, well, not a good one. Right?
Keep going.
So empathy is, again, it's not about the facts. It's because people have all these appetites, and the appetite of human emotion is something that's been going on since the dawn of time. If you haven't eaten in 3 days, you will shove grandma out of line to get your hands on a Big Mac, and you will justify that in your head as being completely acceptable behavior. People get completely focused on different emotional needs. And again, politically incorrect example, but I'm going to give you a really blatant, blunt one. And I've stopped reading fiction because of it. There was a U.S. congressman named Anthony Weiner, and again, you cannot make this junk up, who got into trouble because he got horny one night and he was completely focused on that one emotional need. And he made a technical mistake and he ended up flashing pictures of his junk on Twitter. You can't make that up. What he really, really could have used was someone about 30 seconds prior to that to go, Anthony, I know you're trying to fill an emotional need. Let's take a minute. Let's take a pause here and think about what's really going on. Empathy is the emotional antidote to what happens when people are feeling disrespected. When people feel disrespected, when people feel that they're being ignored, they will become completely distorted. They will rationalize crazy behavior in order to get to you. And going in without empathy is like recognizing that the room is on fire and going in with hammer and nails to repair the damage. No, you can't do it. Empathy is like the fire retardant foam. You need to go in and put the flames out first. Take the energy out of the room. Calm all of your audience down. Then, and only then, you go in with the drywall and the hammer and the nails and repair the damage. But without empathy, you haven't put out the fire. So that's the best analogy that I throw out there. I call it the 7 cardinal rules. 7 rules if you want to be a trusted, credible, and effective leader. Rule number 1, obviously, empathy. Rule number 2, seek to understand what people are actually saying and don't challenge them. If I'm, talking about, contaminated peanut butter and people are like, you're trying to give me cancer. And I answer them with a technical answer about listeriosis in peanut butter. I'm not answering the question. Right. You need to understand why, and words like "why would you say that" should never be in your vocabulary. The plain language version of this: shut up and listen. Actually listen to what people are saying. Figure out why they're asking that. Maybe there's a weird conspiracy theory that there's 5G brain controlling chips in your peanut butter. Trust me, I've seen weirder. But if that's the case, you can't hit them with a listeriosis answer. You got to talk about food safety and integrity and all of the good things that you can do without sounding like a wingnut. But understand what's actually being asked. Address the hot button topics before your audience does. If I, and again, I'm hitting people up on peanut butter, but now it's in my head. If I'm the CEO of a peanut butter company and people are coming to me because they're quite agitated and concerned because we had a product recall, I can walk them through all of the things that we're doing in order to guarantee food safety. I can point to the FDA. I can point to the new machines that we brought on board. I can point to our food safety and handling practices. That's all well and good until that person goes home and Googles us and discovers that we also had a product recall for peanut butter in 2015. And now I've just been proven that I'm a categorical liar. Right. Well, clearly I don't know what I'm talking about because we're doing this again. Right. You've lost your opportunity because it is so much more effective. And I get asked this all the time. Like, why would we call the penalty flag on ourselves? We've learned from that. We don't want to think about that. We don't want to move on. Like let's people are going to figure that stuff out. And it is so much more effective if you can say, hey, Bill, you know what? I don't know if you knew this or not, but we actually had a product recall in 2015. It was a different issue. That was broken glass. This is listeriosis. Let me tell you what we've learned from that incident and what we're applying to this incident and why it's different and why we can work to guarantee food safety. It's such a better answer, right? And now you've done, again, just one of those little things to prove that you can be trusted and credible. Number 4, don't take it personally. If people think that you're running around and giving them cancer, a really, really bad answer is, I'm not giving you cancer. It's our bad peanut butter that's giving you cancer, right? No, it's not going to work, right? You're the owner, you're the CEO, you are the leader, you are the face of this company. It's your job to own this. I call it taking a soccer ball to the face. Sometimes it's going to suck, and all you do is take it and smile and move on. You can't point out why everyone is wrong. You can't point out, you can't play the victim. You can't defend yourself inappropriately. Just move on and point out why you can be trusted. Rule number 5, conclusions before facts. If my key message is we have the safest peanut butter in the Tri-City area, which is, by the way, a pretty narrow definition of peanut butter safety, but let's move on. What humans try to do is we say, look, we've brought in the Food and Drug Administration to look at our packaging line. We've brought in food safety scientists to review our handling practices. And I even eat this peanut butter myself. And that's why I can say we have the safest peanut butter in the Tri-City area. Do it in reverse. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Bill, I know you've got some concerns about our peanut butter. I'm going to tell you this. We have the safest peanut butter in the Tri-City area. Now, why would I say that? I say that because we brought in the US FDA and they've looked at our food safety and handling practices. This is peanut butter that I eat myself after going through that process and that review. And that's why I can say we have the safest peanut butter in the Tri-City. It's such a better package. Rule number 6. Okay, you've done all this work. You've managed to get the mayor on the line. You've got the news director at CNN calmed down. You've got the regulator at the FDA finally ready to believe you. The chairman of the board, your primary investor, the activist investors, all of these people, you've got them. You've established a dialogue. Make sure that dialogue continues. What you don't want is someone to leave that conversation and then think, oh, I forgot to ask about the product recall in 2015. Or I forgot to ask, hey, does this apply to almond butter as well? Or any other question that's out there. I'm not suggesting that you need to give people your private cell phone number so that they can call you at 2 a.m, but make sure there's a way for them. You've done the work. You've finally cracked the nut. You've become a trusted spokesperson. Be the spokesperson. Give them the dedicated hotline number. Give them the email address that they can send questions to, and then actually follow through on it. Don't just let those disappear into the vapor, but work and because this is not a one and done. People are going to people, and humans are an imperfect machine. Humans are going to come up with other questions and other reasons, and you don't want them spiraling at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling saying, oh, I forgot to ask about this. Get that out of their system. Build the empathy. And number 7, understand perception. If everyone thinks that you're contaminating peanut butter on purpose because you're running a doomsday cult, that's very different than you having a food safety and handling issue. And if the food safety and handling issue is because you're lazy, that's very different than we've had a weird listeriosis outbreak or whatever else that's under there. It's very tied in with number 2. Figure out what's really going on. Understand the perception of what's going on. Where CEOs, quite frankly, get into trouble is they think they're in better shape than they are. If we just give people our food safety and handling practices, they'll believe us. We don't need to think about, allegations of this. No, you do. You really do. You need to have an answer for that. So when you've got that, you build the key messages. You've got those in place. We're going to talk about this more in some follow-up webinars. I'm going to break through exactly how to calm down any upset audience. Why your key messages need to be at best, no more than 11 words, no less than 7. That's scientifically proven. But you should be able to answer every message with some variant on that key message. We'll talk about that. The other thing I'm kind of looking forward to is the most common ways you're going to get into trouble. I call them message traps, message torpedoes. The things that you're going to do that you don't want to do. So we'll get into a little bit about the framework and how to answer the messages that are really awkward, that you don't necessarily want to answer, but you really should be, and where that all fits together. I'm going to walk you through what I call the recipe.
Okay.
I don't bake. I'm a good barbecuer, but I don't bake. But even I could do a Duncan Hines birthday cake. I mean, you've got the white powdery goo, and you put. I'm going to get the exact proportions wrong, but you're going to put in 1 egg, 1/4 cup of oil, 1 cup of water. You're going to mix it all together. You're going to put it in a pan in the oven at 400 degrees for 20 minutes. And when it comes out, you have cake. Now, if you forget the egg and you add the egg after it comes out of the oven, you don't have cake. You have a mess. If you've got the wrong proportion, if you're okay, I've added oil, I've added water, but you added 1 cup of oil and 1/4 cup of water instead of the other way around, you don't have cake. You have oily goo. There is a recipe, and I spend a lot of time working hand in hand with CEOs, because oftentimes their primary audience isn't the media. It's not it's other members of the board. It's other, it's the vice presidents. It's the other people around the leadership table. Hey, this is what we're going to do. Here's what's going to work. Here's why we're going to go in the direction we're going to do. When you put the recipe together, it does not matter what the question is. It does not matter what they're really asking. They're going to be satisfied. They may not be happy. I'm not going to promise you that I can make everyone happy, but they're going to be satisfied that you've heard them. You've heard the concern, and you are moving in a direction. They may not like the direction, but they understand why you're moving in a direction. And I think that's the real superpower that goes on out there. If you do that without giving them the empathy, without following the recipe, without following the structure, you very much run the risk of going blind to your audience. They're just going to stop paying attention to what it is you're saying. We'll talk about this next one around. We've already.
Oh, what's a Q code? What are you doing with your Q code?
That's my contact information, and that's my LinkedIn. I'll just leave that up there.
Well, we'll leave it for this. For this great grandfather, we've got your contact information. We'll tag on there as well. Terry from South Africa is a professional board of director advisor to professional boards of directors.
Yep.
Okay. So he's. I'll let you read his question there and see if you can.
Do we have governance under control, or do we discover we've only been managing compliance checklists, leaving us blind when decisive action is needed most? I'm going to give you my favorite consultant answer ever, Mr. Boyson. That depends. If you are dependent on the checklist, that's old school crisis communications. That is a really, really good way to get yourself into trouble. Again, people talk about the importance of the crisis communications plan. I think a crisis communications plan is dangerous. I think they are static. They're not updated. They're old information that is not necessarily relevant. They don't predict the issue. And frankly, they don't allow people the ability to genuinely lead. I think the much better solutions that are out there, I think every CEO should have access to the sounding board. Someone like me who is can understand their audience and their unique business environment, but understands what they're genuinely trying to do and isn't emotionally involved in the problem. I'm not going to sell anything. We have a service we offer that looks at exactly that kind of service for CEOs and for companies. Mm-hmm. Which I'm happy to talk to you about, but that's not what this is about. Terrence says, thanks, Jeff. Agreed. We are long gone on ticking the box, on tick box. We need real-time governance over the entire organization. The world is so much more dynamic than even when it was back in 2001, when we had 9/11. We have real-time information. We have look yesterday. Without getting into the politics of it, the United States suffered a very visual, very dramatic, tragedy. Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at an event in Utah. I'm not going to get into the politics of Charlie Kirk. He was a well-known public figure. CNN wouldn't show the assassination. I'm watching CNN last night. They ran the video up to a certain point, and then they just ran the audio so that we didn't have to watch the horrible visuals. That doesn't change the fact that there were probably 1,000 people in that audience with their phones running. Some were live streaming. And I can promise you that if they weren't live streaming at the time, they were live streaming pretty much immediately afterwards and uploaded videos of the shooting. And you're not going to have any problems finding them on the internet, on YouTube, and on 65 other sources that are out there. That didn't happen 20 years ago. Everyone is now a reporter. Everyone is now a journalist. Everyone can prove that you were lying. It's a much more dynamic world.
So, Andrew,
just curious how this would work if the issue is a lie. Someone or an organization is claiming things that are not true about you or your organization. So we're going to talk about this. Bill and Alex may have the dates for when we're doing this again in October. I'm sorry. We were planning on doing something in October, I believe. Right? I should be. We had talked about this.
We are, I think the 23rd, but I don't want to say
Okay,
that.
we will promote the follow up on this, but I'm going to
Yeah.
have a whole thing about one of the easiest ways to get into trouble. And again, one of those message torpedoes I talked about is denying the negative with a negative. If I said, well, everyone knows that Bill Forster is a child molester, Bill's response is going to be two things right away. He's going to say, I'm not a child molester, and then he's going to punch me in the nose. Both of those are quite justified actions. But all that you're doing is repeating the original allegation. What you want to do is tell people what you are. There's a whole structure I follow when it comes time to deny a negative. How do you deny a negative without repeating the negative? So if the most common example, Bill Clinton, I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. The question he was asked was, Mr. President, did you have sex with that woman? Right. He could have answered the question with, no, I'm an honest man. I've conducted the office of the presidency with integrity and honor. It's a really boring answer. Sometimes boring is good. Now, where this falls apart, by the way, I'll be the first to admit, is that arguably he was having inappropriate relationships with that woman. But and that's why none of this works if you are the one that's lying. This is all about promoting, protecting, and promoting and publishing the truth. So,
Okay. So there's your contact information. We're glad to keep going till the top of the hour, wherever anyone might be. And maybe Jeff will go longer if your question is really good. The concept here is to have the audience get value from investing an hour in meeting Jeff. And our audience, for sure on replays, is always about the CEO. I guess I'll do this as well, Jeff. I'll just flash up there. I assume people can see your book. Since you're one of the few authors that's actually on video that doesn't have like 10 of his books all around him in the background.
No, right there, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, maybe I can't see him.
Yeah.
So I truly enjoyed the book. If you didn't pick up on that, I think probably the last 4 times you and I have talked, whether it be video or recording it for a reason or just talking video, I go to your book. So, A Survival's Guide to Navigating Corporate Crisis. Corrupt.
Yeah, no, not corrupt. Yeah, that's a whole other different kind of crisis. And I get asked, by the way, what do we do about Me Too allegations, for example? And it's where it's really, really critically important to have the truth. And people have different versions of the truth, and that's why it's so critically important to have someone who isn't emotionally connected, who is prepared to take a look at that and can advise you. Sometimes you want to lace up the boxing gloves. Sometimes it's better to not. Sometimes the right play is absolutely to apologize and to make things right. Sometimes no, you lace up the boxing gloves and you defend your reputation aggressively. Where CEOs get into trouble and where careers get lost is when they confuse the two.
Okay. We're going to pause here just for a second and see if anyone has another question of burning desire, or you set it up well that you tipped your hand that we're going to be doing another one probably the month of October, November, and December if you don't run out of great things or we don't get questions. But I think that the CEO audience at CEO Zones, they're warming up to the webinars. and we're still trying to figure out when we go live what is the perfect time. Today we picked noon, assuming that that would be a good time. Earlier in the week we had a 3 o'clock. So we're moving around the times, but it's been my honor to have Jeff, our content partner. We would highly recommend, if you're a CEO looking for very unique curated content, we have the live experts for every area of your life, not just leadership, not just crisis management, but several different looks at professional boardrooms, several different looks at fun things like let me think here. We have an expert on the Civil War, Dr. Harrelson, and he's probably I would go even further that he's an expert on the Southern way of life back when men were men and men were gentlemen, which also meant they carry guns. Which, think of those two things. But in any event, we have an expert.
You have a personal shopper.
We have a personal shopper. That's right. We have Nina, who works with female executives on all of the communication styles, from what do you look like, what do you smell like, all the way through how do you deliver your message in many different environments. So we have many different content partners that specialize in very unique areas of the leader's life, not just leadership. So thank you for joining us on this episode. Looks like I now babbled a minute over, Jeff. I apologize if you had an appointment, but everybody go out there and have a great day. And thank you for allowing us to commemorate 9/11/2001. Its 24th anniversary today with crisis management. And we still pray for those victims, the families of the victims, and the families of the first responders. So thank you. Have a great day.
Cheers, everyone.